Deborah dated her boyfriend for 2 years before he traveled to South Africa. She gave him everything he needed: financial support, encouragement, and love. But after 5 years in South Africa, he came back to Nigeria without her knowledge. Her friend hinted that he was around and set to marry another lady. She even had it on good ground that he just bought a house, and she handed the address over to Deborah. Frank was in the country and didn't bother to inform or see her. It couldn't be. She got all upset and decided to go look for him immediately. What she saw was beyond her. It was Frank, flesh and blood. Could the rumor be true? Frank was also surprised when he saw her, but it was like he didn't care at all. The red lights began to blink in her eyes. Faith, courage, strength, and the assurance he gave her were beginning to fall like a pack of cards. This was the same Deborah who took a loan from her microfinance bank to finance his trip. The same Deborah who starved so she could save enough money for his trip. The same woman he thanked profusely before he traveled and promised to be the best husband to her. He promised to love her until death. This was the same Deborah he said he would die for. Now, he said Deborah couldn't be serious about any unrealistic expectation of marriage from him, especially after the fact that she sold her body for money. He tore away at her character with his false allegation. That statement broke her. Tears fell from her eyes like raindrops. She thought she would be praised for being loyal, faithful, and loving, but she was dead wrong. Is this Frank or another person? What? Ha! How? When? Where did you hear all that about me? Was all she could say. While he was shouting on top of his voice, a lady walked into the living room and asked what the matter was. Deborah was lost for words. As she was bawling her eyes out and her shoulders heaved uncontrollably, her friend stood and watched. She didn't know what else to do when she saw the obviously pregnant lady in a matching cloth with Frank. Welcome to my channel. This story of everyday people like you and I who made avoidable mistakes in their marriage will make you realize that marrying a godly and God-fearing person is the surest way to happily ever after. If this is the sort of stories you like, subscribe to my channel so you can get a notification whenever I upload a new video. Let's get right down to it. Frank introduced Deborah to his pregnant fiancée and told her she needn't bother about her, as she was already in his past. They cuddled and kissed each other while Deborah looked at Frank through her tears in disbelief. Deborah continued to cry until her eyes turned red and her head ached. Good thing she went with her friend. It probably wouldn't have ended well, as Frank's new girlfriend was no easy meat at all. She looked at Deborah in disgust and shoved her out of the house. Frank didn't see her shattered pieces and mangled self-esteem. The encounter that day was pretty ugly. As she left that day, she cursed him. "You will never prosper," she said. "You took my sweat, my blood, and my money, and you disgraced me. God will fight for me and punish you." He called her bluff and answered amen. "Get out," Frank roared. "Those are the words of a frustrated fool. Don't ever come back here. I don't want to set my eyes on you ever again." Didn't Psalm 146 verse 3 say, "Put not your trust in princes, nor in the Son of Man in whom there is no help, but to trust in the Lord with all your heart, and don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge God, and He will direct your path." A few months later, Frank married Helen. Life was sweet and beautiful. He invested in a good business for her. She bought gold jewelries and flaunted them everywhere she went. They had a baby girl and life couldn't be happier. He showered her with money like rain, and she enjoyed it thoroughly. In fact, she was drenched in luxury. Suddenly, Frank became ill with a strange illness and his business took a hit. Years after the sickness, he was still broke. The bank repossessed the house he used as collateral for the loan he got for his businesses. Helen couldn't help because she also ran her business down with frivolous spending. The river ran dry and Helen couldn't stay with her broke husband anymore. He was unable to sustain their extravagant life and day-to-day living. Both of them were flat broke. To add salt to his injury around this time, Helen's best friend, who she had fallen out of friendship with, hinted that he wasn't the biological father of his child. It became a matter of extreme urgency to determine the paternity of his daughter, because there was already fire on the mountain in his marriage. She was causing a lot of trouble, and he no longer felt comfortable at home because of all the pressure and threat to leave him. Frank was heartbroken. He was broken sick and had no shoulder to cry on. That night, he went for DNA test, and the paternity results showed he had no relationship with the child. "She ruined my life. She ruined my life," was all he could mutter as he stared at the result. Helen was too arrogant to feel remorseful. She left with her daughter that night, and that ended their 3 years of whirlwind romance. Helen did not only dump him, but he was also very broke. It was like she was determined to ruin Frank completely. In less than 3 years he went from living a lavish lifestyle to going broke, getting sick and being unable to get answers to his wife's infidelity and getting dumped. He fell really hard on hard times. He could have sworn on his life that Helen was never about his money. But who was the father of his supposed daughter? Could it be that the curse his ex-girlfriend laid on him was already working? Retribution has a way of catching up with people, they say. Juliet confessed she was pregnant with her sister's boyfriend's child. She didn't know that her fiance and baby sister were doing honeymoon in her house while she was at work. The worst of it all was it happened in the full glare of her daughter. They didn't consider that at all. Oh my goodness, this was so painful. This guy had no job for the 3 years she dated him. She kept him at home and went out to work while he stayed under her roof free of charge, ate her food and played games all day, and she still had to perform wife duties at night. His excuse was that the younger sister was the one who listened to him, kept him company, and was always there when he needed someone to comfort him, while his fiancée was always out working and never gave him a listening ear. He said he fell in love with the sister and wanted her to have his baby. Helen was enraged. She couldn't believe she got played. This was the same man she left her husband for. Juliet was naive, and a handsome guy showed her attention. She was overwhelmed with his sweet words and fell for him. "You?" Helen asked both of them to pack whatever they had in her house and leave that night. She took the mobile phone she bought for them and sent them packing. Juliet was pleading, kneeling and crying, but Helen had closed up her mind against her and told her she would never stay in her house again for that huge betrayal. She told Juliet to go back to their mother in the village and do whatever she wanted with the pregnancy or go with addition. The choice was hers. Anything whatsoever you would that men should do to you, do the same thing to them. It's so true that whosoever sold sand to his neighbor will be paid in hard stones. Helen and Frank according to sow the wind and reap the whirlwind. Both of them got worse than they gave. Frank tried as much as he could to pick up the pieces of his life and start all over again. He went into business again with the help of his friends and got a contract here and another one there. It wasn't anything big, just enough to sustain him. At this time, he was clocking 43 and tried his luck again at dating. Every woman he spoke to rejected him. No one wanted to date him. He had no car, no decent home at 43, and no good job. He could only afford a room in an apartment he shared with 2 other people. It seemed life wasn't fair to him. He continued to work hard, but his effort didn't match his miserly and pitiable small income. One day a client asked him if he knew any caterer who could cater for a birthday guest of 500. The caterer she contracted the business out to had called to say she would not be able to deliver because she had suddenly taken ill and was in the hospital. The party was in 2 days and needed an urgent help. Frank told her he was the right person for the business and asked that she gave him some time to get her the quotation for the business. He ran to a popular restaurant around his residence and negotiated with the owner. They agreed to share the profit, and Frank also volunteered to be one of the servers so he could get more pay. They agreed. Like joke, Frank got the contract and was given a part payment. The restaurant delivered a great service. The food was great and everyone was happy. Frank was happy he had struck gold. He was hard at work, shuttling from table to table with trays of food in his hands. The people at the party were not people of small means. Music was loud. The celebrant danced, and she was sprayed money. Lots of money. Then it was time for the celebrant to cut her 40th birthday cake. The baker had forgotten to put the knife on the cake table. Someone beckoned on one of the servers to get them a table knife, and when he returned to the cake stand to hand the knife over to one of them, he stopped in his track and stared at the celebrant, who was unaware of what was going on. Frank fainted on the spot and was rushed out by the other servers in uniform. They assured the guests all would be well. When he came to, he was too dumbfounded to verbalize what he had seen. Cynthia, the caterer he worked with, encouraged him to rest well and not push himself too hard. Frank sat with his head in his hands and sobbed quietly. After the cutting of the cake, the husband of the celebrant went to look for him. He introduced himself as a medical practitioner and proceeded to ask if he could help him in any way. Frank assured him he was okay, and the doctor left. Cynthia told him she knew the celebrant and asked if Frank was interested in her grass to grace tail. His ears spread out like antennae. He was all ears. Some 6 years back, the celebrant was deathly ill and was admitted in a hospital where the doctor worked at. Cynthia's niece was also a nurse aide at the same hospital. The patient, who happened to be the celebrant, was depressed at that time and was going through the most difficult time in her life. Dr. Grant had just returned home from abroad where he worked for some time. His parents wanted him to come home and take over the family hospital. Their major concern, however, was that he was still single at that age, and they wanted him to marry someone from Nigeria. It was easy for him, since he had no serious relationship abroad. It was just work, church, and home. To cut the long story short, one day, they met at the hospital cafeteria where doctors and patients buy meals, and they got talking. Since her own doctor encouraged her to find a way of opening up her mind and talk to someone about her pain, she felt relaxed to talk to Dr. Grant for some reason about what it was that got her depressed. Deborah said she never thought in her heart of hearts her ex-fiancé was going to treat her the way he did. They had promised each other they would grow old together and spend a lifetime of love together. He broke her heart and crumbled her self-esteem. She became depressed. She had panic attack and anxiety. She tried to move on with a little strength she had, but one day she fainted at work and was rushed to the hospital. She came out delirious and unaware of her surroundings. That prompted her doctor to admit her in the hospital for proper monitoring and evaluation. Somehow, it felt like the two of them had known each other for a long time. From then onward they spoke every day. He preached to her and invited her to church. She was discharged after 2 weeks. Deborah continued to attend church, and they continued to see each other. After 2 years of proper Christian courtship, they got married. Their marriage was beautiful. They had love, patience, temperance, faith, good communication, and most importantly, they loved and feared God. They were blessed with 3 kids in quick succession. Cynthia didn't know why Frank cried all through the story. She felt it probably reminded him of something. They weren't close, so she tried not to get involved in his business. For the rest of the night, Frank watched Deborah from behind the curtains. He dared not show his face again. He cried himself to sleep that night. She was the only woman who ever truly loved him. He was her first love. She loved him immensely. She gave him hope, happiness, money, and affection. Whatever he needed, she gave. She sacrificed everything for him. She trusted him, and that trust strengthened their love. She wasn't from a wealthy home herself, but she made sure he ate before she did. Her weight dropped day after day as she worked really hard at her job and ate less in order to save enough money for him to travel abroad so he could afford a better life for both of them. Her friends warned her against doing too much for him, but she assured them he was for real and wouldn't betray her, but she was wrong. How did Deborah do it? Mrs. Deborah Grant, the daughter-in-law of one of the biggest hospitals in town. What kind of grace do you carry, Deborah? Every man you came across enjoyed that grace, peace, tranquility, happiness, riches, honor, and favor. How did I not decipher this? How did I miss Deborah, the most decent woman I ever dated? What a world. He sobbed in his pillow again. He knew no one would love him again like she did, and the fear of being alone plagued him. He was tormented by his betrayal and lack of empathy for Deborah. Instead, he accused her of being promiscuous, just something to take her off his back. Although she sacrificed all for him, she never physically intimate with him. She was determined she was going to wait until her wedding night. Frank knew he had to continue with his life, and so when his friend suggested he traveled abroad in search of a greener pasture, he didn't hesitate. His friend advised him he could travel with his visit visa to Canada, and once there it would be very easy to get a job before the visa expired. Frank was ecstatic when he got to Canada. Fortunately, he could stay in Canada for 6 months. He scouted everywhere for a job, but because he had only a visit visa, he couldn't work with it. If he got a job, the visit visa could be converted to work visa, but he was just too unlucky. The little cash he went with finished quickly. He had no job, no accommodation, no food, and no one to help. He slept on the side of the road like the others in the same situation as him. That was how he roamed the street until it was time to go back home, otherwise he would be deported. Once again, his big plan just blew away like chaff before the wind. He came to the conclusion that Deborah's curse was definitely working overtime in his life. Everywhere he went, he met misfortune. He decided to put his pride aside and go to Deborah for forgiveness. If he didn't, he would never find peace. One winter morning, the police was conducting a robbery investigation around a neighborhood. Frank had an uncanny misfortune of being at a wrong place at the wrong time. He slept in a tent on the sidewalk that night and was arrested with everybody in the area. The police found he had overstayed his visa and handed him over to the Canada Border Services Agency. Frank was deported with only the cloth on his back and mobile phone. It was the most humiliating experience yet. One day, he traced Dr. Grant's hospital and was lucky to see him that day. He was just about leaving for the day when Frank introduced himself to him at the reception. He told him his life was in a complete mess and only Dr. Grant could save him. He knelt and pleaded with him to hear him out. He told him that in fact it was a matter of life and death. Well, Grant invited him to his office and asked how he could help. He started by saying that all he wanted was forgiveness and prayer, and that like the prodigal son, he knew he had sinned against heaven and against him. Dr. Grant was confused because they had never had any encounter except on the day of his wife's birthday, and it only lasted a few minutes. What on earth could he be asking forgiveness for? By the time Frank finished his lamentation, he knew he had to do something immediately. Frank assured him that during the time he dated Deborah, there was never any intimacy between them. This corroborated the story his wife told him before they got married. He called his wife before he left the hospital that he was coming home with an important visitor. By the time he got home, food was ready, but before then, he called her to the room for a heart-to-heart talk. He informed her the visitor he had with him was no other person than Frank. He explained his predicament and the need to forgive him wholeheartedly. She agreed and went with her husband to the living room to welcome Frank. He was immediately on his knees when he saw her, but she was all smiles and in fact thanked him for the past. Frank's shabby appearance was too visible to ignore. He had on a mishmash of faded attire and looked 20 years older. She probably wouldn't recognize him if she met him on the road. It was obvious life had dealt a hard blow on him. If it wasn't for that experience, she would never be married to her godly husband. Who was she not to forgive him? After all, the GDO of vengeance had avenged her. She prayed for him, reversed the curse, and asked that he ate with the family. He turned down her offer, but her husband insisted. He ate silently as husband and wife chatted about their day. Be careful how you live your life. Treat everyone with respect and honor and dignity, because you don't know what the future holds for you. Let us be guided in our dealings with other people. Owe no man anything except the love of Christ. Philippians chapter 4 verse 8 says, Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Whenever you think about your marriage, think about this verse. It will help you to treat your spouse and marriage better. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Click the notification bell, like, and leave your comments. Thank you for watching my video, beautiful people. Until next time, bye and God bless you.